Hi, welcome to today's Leaders in Mental Wellness and Diabetes, where you will hear insights from the top minds in the world of diabetes care, hosted by Dr. Char.
Today we have Christel. Christel, could you pronounce your last name for us?
You bet. It's Oerum. So Christel Oerum.
Oerum. Christel Oerum. She is the owner and founder of Diabetes Strong and diabetesfoodie.com. It's a health, fitness, and wellness website. All her products are diabetes focused and is written to inspire, inform, and empower us. I kind of did a sneak peek, looked at it, and it's phenomenal information, to say the least. She's a speaker, an advocate, does online presentations, as well as serves people in face-to-face audiences. Christel, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to meet you. I'm in Nashville today. Where in the world are you?
I am currently in Miami, so Miami, Florida.
That's that pretty tan. That's it.
I've been here for about a month now. I was out in California before that, so still a sunny state.
Oh, yes, you knew to do that at least, right? Well, Ocala, Florida for almost 20 years. So now in Nashville, where our son lives. And so it's a good day here, but Florida has a special place in my heart.
I am enjoying the sunshine.
I hope you enjoy it. If you've only been there a month, it's all new and still the honeymoon. So even when the honeymoon's over, I hope that you enjoy it. I like having a casual conversation with leaders, so we as patients and we as just in a community get together can sit and hear from people who are doing it and being successful in their arena, and just get to know each other a little better. And I do appreciate you being on here. One of the things that I noticed, first of all, I know you're type 1. And so that makes me extra close. We're not just doing this for type 1s, but I feel community with type 1ers. But I saw that your mama works out with you. I am so jelly of her. Look at that body.
Yeah, that was I know exactly what photo you're talking about. And so she came to visit me when I lived out in California. She is Danish, born and raised in Denmark, so Europe, and my mom is still back in Europe. So she came to visit and she came out and she worked out with me and we hiked together, and it's fun. We're both active people.
So help me understand, just from your perspective, diabetes patients, we're always looking at thin and thick. And hopefully there's not nearly as much judging. But sometimes when we that are thicker see you and your mama, does that size come natural to you? Or have you had to work really hard at keeping those things? While it's not everything, it is important for us to know. I mean, we like understanding that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a tall girl for US. I'm 5'8". So I have more frame to fill out, so to say. But I'm naturally a slender frame, so I don't necessarily diet to be this size.
So that
answers your question.
Yes, it does, because some people question that, and I know I get confused with type 2s because I do have a thicker frame and I'm 5'1". But at the same time, it's not about thick or thin, but it's about, here I go deep already, and I didn't mean to do that, but it's all about understanding the difference and not feeling like that it's not work for all of us, or that it's okay for all of us, wherever we are. But it is interesting for people to know where we start from. And so I just always ask, when you're 5'7" or 8, I wouldn't have a problem being heavy if I were a few inches taller. That would be, but it still doesn't change the fact that my A1C has to be not just managed, but I have to do, if there's any insulin resistance that I can muster up at all, I get to work that as well as type 2s. How do you see yourself? Anybody else in your family with diabetes? And can you tell us about that journey?
Yes. So no, I'm the only one living with type 1 diabetes. There's a part of my heritage that I don't necessarily know. So I don't know if there's diabetes there, but the people I do know, there's no diabetes. Do you want the whole diagnosis story?
Sure.
Often people, it's interesting, it's often something I get asked. I think a lot of people living with diabetes get asked about their diagnosis story. I think it's one of those things that we all remember our diagnosis, right? I was diagnosed when I was 19 years old. I did not expect it at all. I am Danish. I was going to high school in Denmark. We graduated at 19. So I just graduated high school that summer. I was working 2 jobs because I was saving up money to go travel the world. And I was super tired all the time, but I was also partying, working 2 jobs, probably not sleeping. I was drinking a lot of water, but I was just being healthy. So all the symptoms were there. I just did not recognize them as being symptoms of type 1 diabetes. My family did, however, because I would fall asleep at random times, like family gatherings. I would sit on the couch and then fall asleep before dinner, stuff like that. One of my aunts was like, don't you think you should go see your doctor? I went and saw my doctor, my primary care physician. He gave me a long speech about eating healthy, acting, being responsible, talking to a 19-year-old, right? And then he asked a few questions, and then he had enough knowledge, I guess, about there are other things going on. So he did a blood sugar measurement right there in the office, and he basically diagnosed me right there and that my blood sugars were off the charts. This was a Friday. And the thing is, he might have explained diabetes to me. He might not have, probably did. It was a family doctor. I mean, he was a fairly good doctor as far as I remember him. But I remember biking home. Again, remember, this is Denmark, so everybody's on their bicycles. I biked home from that appointment thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I've been handed a death sentence. I don't remember him explaining anything. I just remember coming home. My mom came home, I think an hour later, she was home, and she's a nurse. So she has some basic understanding. And she could kind of talk me down, go like, hey, you're not dying of this right now. This is not a death sentence. So we had that conversation, and then we went and saw a diabetes specialist that Monday. So I was sent home for the weekend, which I still think is super weird. But I was sent home for the weekend. My mom and I went to the diabetes clinic, which is one of the best ones in Denmark. I was fortunate enough to live really close to that clinic. It's called Steno Diabetes Center. And there I was taken through the whole training. And I was really fortunate to be assigned a diabetes pediatric nurse named Lotte. And Lotte explained it all to me. And she was also the one who's like, you know what? And I actually reconnected with her again a few years ago, which I thought was pretty special because she had such a big impact on how I perceive diabetes. Because she was the one who told me, you know what? And she says, I'm paraphrasing, which I probably am. This sucks, but there's nothing you can't do with diabetes. And I kind of took that and I ran with it. Within a year of my diagnosis, I went on that trip I was saving up money for. I backpacked around India, and I've done pretty much everything I wanted with my life. So I still really believe that there is, for the most part, nothing we can't do with diabetes if we have access to medications. Of course, if we need insulin, we need insulin. We have access to knowledge, and then also that we have, the mindset. And I think meeting the right medical professionals early on can really set the stage for a lot of us. Because if I had met a diabetes nurse who'd be like, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. You have to live at home. You have to be in a bubble. Then my outlook on life with diabetes might have been different. So I was fortunate, both that I could get really good care and that I met the right people and I had the right team right off the bat.
That's amazing. I was 16. I've been diagnosed for almost 50 years. I was in Germany. Actually, the first time I had flown was to go to Germany from rural America. And so I'd never been anywhere, and to finish high school there, got married at 16. That's another whole story, another whole podcast. But I was diagnosed and they didn't know what we know today. I get it now, but I through the years wondered why they didn't tell me. I don't even remember them telling me about type 1. I don't know if they knew. I'm going to go do some research and see when that became real obvious. But I peed on a stick. I didn't have, I have a Dexcom now. Do you wear a Dexcom?
I do. I wear the Dexcom G6.
And I'm very happy with my 6. And in the middle of the night, just last night, it told me that my blood sugar was going down. So I avoided a low that can sometimes make me feel bad for a few hours and the next day. And so I didn't have any of that. And after being diagnosed for a few years and listening to doctors, I thought I did have a death sentence. I think I'm not wrong that they thought it was pretty, not hopeless, but yet there wasn't the information we have today. See, when I look at a model, I mean, you look like a model. I don't know if you are or not, but you look like a model. And so, you're 5'7", you're a model, you exercise, you're riding a bike to the doctor's office. I'm learning right now. I have a trainer. It comes to my house, and I'm learning with this thing in my door. I pull and I push and I get my legs sore. That's the first trainer I've ever had. So difference in lifestyles, difference in what we knew and how we knew it, comes down to how are we the same? And that is when we get that diagnosis, that feels like something heavy until we figure it out. Yeah. We're trying to figure out what happens in those times. And I chose a path after high school. My husband was already in college. When I was 22, we had the best little boy. He was 22 days old, laid in my arms. And so my only child is older than you, I'm sure now, but he was just 22 days old. Can you imagine? He was so precious. But then before long, he had to go to school. And we were working, and so I didn't get a start, and I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was 14. So by the time I started to school, at least 30 or above, I guess 30, 31, and I took a class at a time. I literally was 20 years finishing my doctorate, but somebody's going to call me Dr. Char.
Love it.
But my point with that is, as I grew with it, I learned that anxiety and stress was such an integral part, and yet nobody addressed that. Long after I was seeing patients, doctors would say to me, I would refer them to you, except I don't want them to think that I believe they're crazy. Now, that's not what happens today. But you have to understand, back then, I've been doing this over 30 years. Back then, it was taboo, as opposed to like counseling and getting mental health help, as opposed to today, it's in vogue. I have teenagers come just because their friends have a counselor. They just want a counselor. And so if my goal is to get somebody in my field, to be part of the medical teams, like an endocrinologist, a dietitian, an educator, all those things. I want a chance at, while they're amenable. Statistics shows us that a patient is amenable the first few months, but there's fear attached to that. There's anxiety attached to that. So that's my story. I want to be able to earlier access them before they fall off the wagon 15 times and decide I can't do this. And start getting accustomed to letting their A1C go amiss. And so how with your work, I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. And I know you're online, but you have great information on there. So I know you do a lot of things. How does anxiety and stress show up in the clientele you work with?
Well, it kind of depends on, which platform you're talking about. So on the website, for example, that's more us. It's not the royal we. It's my husband and I who run the website together. So that's the we when I say we. So the way that we create content there is that it's what people look for. Sometimes we will also add content because it's needed. So a lot of the mental health content actually that we have on the website is on there, not necessarily because people know what they're looking for. They just know something is off. I have a lot of people who react to, for example, we have an article about diabetes burnout, which is a real thing.
It is.
And we have so many people, whenever they read it, they're like, oh my gosh, there's a word to it. I'm not nuts. This is a real thing. And I'm not the only one going through it. So I think that's one thing, is just having something available online that people can sort of stumble on, well, we know which kind of words people search for, right? And having resources telling people not just, okay, this might be what's going on, but also what are some of the strategies or what are some of the things that you can start implementing to, work through it. Also, how do you find a mental health specialist who knows about diabetes? So there's some great resources now because, well, everyone doesn't know that you exist, for example. So they need to go look, right?
Sure.
And I think when it comes to more of the so on social media or when I work with clients one-on-one, I don't necessarily, I'm not a mental health professional. So if people are really struggling, I will not dive into that discussion necessarily. I will help them find a resource because I think it's very important to know what are you good at, what you're qualified to do. And it's not my field. So what I usually do is I refer them, for example, as you probably know, ADA has a really good registry for mental health professionals who also know diabetes or who are specialized or qualified to talk about diabetes. So stuff like that. But for me, it's something that I hear people talk a lot about. So I think you're spot on. And then optimally, there would be a health team that would include a mental health specialist because it's the same thing about, it's kind of preventive care as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to get up into the point where people are struggling. Why not help them before they start to struggle, before their health start to deteriorate or even their mental health starts to deteriorate. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
I hear a lot of people now talk about the monitors, whether Dexcom or whatever. Yep. We've come a long distance. I remember when a friend of mine, her dad went to the state capitol fighting for her to get a monitor. Yeah. But yet today, type 2s, if they're on insulin, can get a Dexcom. I'm like, when I would see a Dexcom or I would see a pump, I used to think, type 1er.
Yeah.
I know that. Why in the world, and I hope we get there, why in the world aren't we doing pre-diabetes with monitors so that we can prevent getting to where we are? Wouldn't that be a novelty? But right now we're fighting, I say we, I'm not doing anything, but they're fighting to get every type 2 the ability, I guess, for insurance to pay for it. I'm not real familiar with that language, but yeah, I remember that one of my dear friends was in my wedding. She's my age and she was diagnosed, but because it was type 2 and we had monitors, she could not get one. I say monitors, it may have even been a pump or a monitor, some device. And her dad actually had to go to the state capitol and fight, and she got it. And now today, we laugh, everybody can have it, but there's still, we've come so far. I'm so thankful for online, this ability. I have served people one-on-one and face-to-face forever. I know how to do that with my eyes closed, but you put me on this computer and expect me to handle it. And even the monitors, even the pumps. I mean, there's just so much to learn with that if you have been used to the old way, sometimes it's easier just to stay in those old school ways. So I'm pushing myself to make sure that I adapt to that. And when the information is there, there's so much of it. And here's the thing that I want to draw attention to your site. And this is one of the main reasons. There's so much information, and you said, I know my lane. It's one thing to give a lot of information. It's another for we that sit back and look at it to wonder, is that really true? Is that accurate? Is that good? When you know somebody knows their lane, you're not going to cross over to doing, it sounds like you're not going to cross over and do mental health counseling because that's not your lane, but you're going to find the professionals in the best of places. But it does sound like you've learned the technology of it to know where people search. That's things I'm learning right now. Where do they search? How do they find you? What is it that they want? Not what you know they need. What do they look for? What can I do to serve? So we wouldn't have blamed you if you said, I'm type 1. I'm not going to live my life dealing with everybody else's diabetes. So we wouldn't have blamed you, and I don't think anybody would have blamed me, but I know my path as to how I got here. But what got you to serving this community as opposed to saying, I'm going to take care of myself and then I'm going to have my own life and career outside of this?
Sure. I was working in the diabetes industry, not for myself. I was working for a pump/sensor manufacturer. And you can probably guess which company that was. You can also look at my LinkedIn. You'll see that. It's pretty publicly available. I was working for a company in Los Angeles. And aside from that, I was doing my own thing. I was actually competing in bodybuilding competitions because I like to work out. I think muscles are beautiful, and it was a lot of fun. And it's a sport, right? And I'd never really been like competitive in sports before. So that was a first. I was doing that for me. And while doing that, that meant I took my training to a whole nother level. Taking my training to a whole nother level meant that all of a sudden I realized how complicated that is when you live with insulin-dependent diabetes. And I don't think it matters if it's type 1.5, 1, or 2. Insulin makes things complicated, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So what I did was I went online. I was like, I'm just going to find some guides on how do I do this. And it was crickets. I didn't find anything. That I could consume at least. I found a few like scientific papers, but nothing that was readily, easily accessible. So I created my own. So that's kind of how it all started, with me just documenting what was I doing online when it comes to exercise and my diabetes. And it was more of a blog, a few people read it, mostly my mom. And it was like very small. And then at one point, it kind of escalated. And my husband and I kind of looked at each other. There's an unmet need here. If I'm looking for it, other people might also be looking for it, right? So it started out, again, with just me doing my thing and then realizing, wait a minute, other people might also be looking for this. And then the next step of it was kind of like realizing that sharing my story, sharing my experiences had value. I didn't realize this. This was back in 2014, 15. So it's not that long ago. And I'd never really shared my story broadly before. I was not on social media talking about my diabetes, anything like that. Not because I was ashamed, just like I didn't realize my story had value or my voice had value. And all of a sudden I realized this, and my husband and I both have business backgrounds. We sat down and like, okay, then how are we going to put this into a structure that can reach as many people as possible, with the goal of bringing free information to people living with diabetes? Because I don't think information should be behind a wall of pay here. Also, people living with diabetes, we have so many other costs already. So the goal was, let's create a universe for people living with any type of diabetes where they can find the information to live their best, healthiest lives. So it started out, again, me just doing my thing as a type 1 woman, and then it to be a site for people living with everything from pre-diabetes, again, to any type of diabetes. And the goal is to continue to put out content that people find helpful. So how do we do that? Well, we do a lot of analysis saying, well, what are people looking for? Which questions are unanswered? Or which questions are not answered in a format that people can actually digest and use? So most of the articles on the website are written by people living with diabetes. You'll see not that many of them are written by me anymore. I'm focused on YouTube now, which I think is a lot of fun. It's a different medium, right? It's one of those things that not everyone will read an article and get the information right away. And we don't all learn in the same way. So me also being on YouTube means that now I can present a lot of the same information, but in a different format. Mm-hmm. And I'm having fun with it. So
that's awesome. That is certainly awesome. On your website, I saw people's names. Give me just a second. It's impressive board of advisors. I know I've already interviewed your editor, Ginger.
Yeah, Ginger's awesome.
And then I'm scheduled to interview Mark Heyman next week.
Amazing. Oh, good.
And so we have a few connections, but we can do this in community style. I think I'm going to use me as an example. We that are not computer savvy, maybe, but need it just as much as anybody else. And I'm not talking about the older group. I'm talking about people that have just been diagnosed and they don't know the verbiage enough to know what they need and where to search. That doesn't matter what age you are. And when you start finding it, and then you can return to it easier and easier and easier. So what I think you just described that I like is a posture of your heart. That service. Now, I have charged for counseling. It's my career. So I have long time ago settled that it's okay. It's my career. It's okay. But the service part of you, that's a posture of your heart. And that makes, for me, and I'm sure others, that makes it so much better. And then when you look like you look, and if you're, I don't know what you're doing on YouTube, but if you go to YouTube and you're showing people how to exercise, that'll make anybody want to try, right?
Well, I mean, actually not necessarily. I have people who told me that they find it intimidating because I'm at an advanced level. You know, I didn't just start working out. The things that I do are, you know, for a lot of people, for example, if I'm lifting weights, it's going to be heavier than they can start out with. But my point is always, I even have girlfriends who go like, well, I don't think I'm going to go out and work out with you because you're just going to like destroy me. And I'm like, that's not my goal.
That's not
my goal. Is that I want you to be as happy about going to the gym as I am, or going for a walk, going for a bike ride, so that you will continue doing it. And then hopefully at one point you'll go do the same things that I do with me, right? So I think it's one of those things that I do try to show the different levels and different things you can do. But a lot of the stuff I talk about on actually on YouTube, sorry, most of it is tech. Because a lot of people go on YouTube and they look for tech. So for example, the Dexcom that we talked about, or CGM, or continuous glucose monitors. I talk a lot about that because people have a lot of questions.
Sure.
I've talked about Libre, which is the one that's more widely available. It's a little round disc.
Yes.
Which is more often prescribed for type 2s as well. And it's been interesting to see sort of what people find interesting.
It is. And the truth is, whether it be about what we're wearing on our arm or on our tummy, whether it's the exercise, this kind of casual conversation, what I'm hoping for this is that just that when I see your mama and she's in exercise clothing, I look at her and immediately I thought, hey, it's just not this young model. Her mama is invested. So when we get online, we can reach people that might count themselves out for whatever reason. So I'm hoping a casual conversation about monitors, people that are afraid to try it, or I don't know how, and I don't want to get too much insulin, and so that pump scares me, or I don't look like her, so how in the world can I ever weight train? How can I get strength training done? I can walk my 3 miles a day, but put those bands in, you wouldn't want to see me. It is hilarious, but I'm doing it. I'm doing it on my level and where I'm at, and I'll either get weak as I age or I'll stay strong. And so I'm going to learn. I'll either quit serving people when I no longer go into a one-on-one office, or I'll get my dang butt online and learn how to Zoom, and then learn how to do what I do in trainings with people. And then I'll continue and maybe even leave a legacy. Even if I don't leave a legacy, I'd like to add to the body of knowledge. And so I've got some free resources right now. Oh gosh, I got to show you. Let me find it. Okay, so this is one of my 4 free resources right now. It's a book about understanding anxiety and reversing it. So on this website that I am creating, Lord, I don't want to talk too much about it today because nobody needs to go look at it right now. I got word this morning. I've only advertised for my anxiety audit, which is free. And this is just understanding it, and it's free. And so I put them on the website. So the lady that's helping me do the audit, she said, Dr. Char, you may want to go look at the website. There's no link connecting. Is that not hilarious? You could go today. I could show this book. You could say, yes, I want to see how to reverse my anxiety. And you go to my website and there's no link to get it. And so,
small detail.
of course, I am going to be working on that, and I'm going to make sure that's fixed. But I want to add to the body of knowledge. And and I can't do that if I sit down in my world and don't get connected with others in the age we are. And for me, it is about time spent at older venues. But for the newly diagnosed, it is time not spent yet to even get an understanding. It takes some time and a process to understand where you are once you're diagnosed. And so, number one, if they come to your website, they can get information that is, let me see if I've got this right. More than not, the information is what most people that you've done your research and homework on want to know. So the probability is that some, if not all of what they're questioning inside them, they may find some of the answers that they're looking for.
I hope so. Yeah. And if they don't, I hope and what we've also done is that, well, you know, when you have a website, most people also have like a Facebook and, you know, Instagram, and we have all that. And what we also did on our Facebook is that we also have a Facebook group. So we actually have a fairly large 20-something thousand Facebook group for people living with diabetes. It's called Diabetes Strong Community. And we don't moderate it as, meaning if they're, you know, snake oil salesmen, stuff like that, they get kicked out of the group. But aside from that, we don't necessarily monitor, we don't control the conversation. So it's basically just 20-something thousand people who have a place where they can interact and communicate. It does require them to be on Facebook, obviously, but it's a closed group. So whatever they post there, their friends and family can't necessarily see unless they're in the group as well. So I thought having that peer support community has been pretty amazing. Whereas, for example, for Instagram, it's just me showing my life and what I do and running around. Right now, it's a lot of photos of me running around Miami. But I mean, what I try to show with that account is what life with diabetes can look like. And I actually have a lot of newly diagnosed parents, mostly to newly diagnosed children, who's like, this is so refreshing because I can see that, you know, the future I'm wishing for my child can actually be achieved. Because there's so much fear with the newly diagnosed. And obviously I'm not showing, you know, every second of my day. A few people are asking for that. I'm like, this sounds really boring. No 24 hours with me. It's like, this is me working from my computer. But, you know, I am showing what you can do. You can travel. You can move to other places. You can live a happy family life. You can be active. You can have a career if you want. I mean, there's so much you can do. So I'm trying to show that through images because that's what Instagram is.
So your Insta handle, how do they reach you on Instagram?
It's called Diabetes Strong _IG. The underscore IG stands for underscore Instagram. It's basically because somebody else snatched up Diabetes Strong before I got to it. I was a little late to the game.
Okay, so it's diabetes _strong.
No, Diabetes Strong _IG.
I got you. Duh.
Where IG stands for Instagram.
Okay.
And our Facebook group is just called Diabetes Strong Community. And if you ever go on there, you'll see a photo of me. So you know you're in the right place.
And that's where
that's on Facebook.
The group.
Yes, that's on Facebook.
And that group, again, for clarity, that group is just for patients to talk to each other. They're not going to get, basically, they're not going to get your help or your direction. They're going to just share with each other. You're going to monitor that to keep it a clean, healthy setting, but they're going to be able to just talk with each other the way I like to go to groups and see chihuahuas.
Exactly.
I don't want anybody selling me another chihuahua. I have a little mean girl right now. I don't need another one. But I do love to look at them. I like to know what people are doing with theirs and how they're growing a puppy up. So this is what you're doing with Diabetes Strong and a large community, so that there's a variety of concepts. There's a variety of information. We can get information anywhere. I'm not saying that information is wrong. I'm just saying all information is not wrong. We want it, but good information we have to search for. So once we know that we can find that with Diabetes Strong, it's an easy place for me to go back to over and over and over. Help me know one more thing. I saw only the picture of diabetes socks. Do you not sell products? I thought you sold products.
We do not. So in an article, everything has a journalistic angle. So that article is one of our latest articles, and that is about, well, diabetes foot care, diabetes socks. So the ones that we do have links to websites where you can then click and go buy that. As it also says on any article, if there's an affiliate, that means that we get a small cut. But it's not us selling the products. The only product that we sell on the website is, I do have a Fit with Diabetes ebook that I wrote a few years ago. That one can be found on the website. And then I do a limited amount of one-to-one coaching, and that is also a paid service. But aside from that, there's not really anything that's paid services. The way that we pay our bills is through advertising.
Well, I certainly hope that anybody on here today will find Diabetes Strong. I'm going to find it more than I even have today. And I'm sure that I will learn, and especially those with a newly diagnosis. I think it's imperative that we find good information. Thank you for doing all that. Thank you for being who you are. I believe that joy is our birthright. And in the 50s, there was a study that said, raise your hands, smile, now try to feel like poop. You can't. No, because it's a posture. And I can tell you have that's in my world, but I can tell in yours, there's some sophistication comes with how you're offering to our community. And I think that's imperative with all the information that's out there. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's one of the things that was really important to me with this platform is that the way that Diabetes Strong is run, that it reflects my approach to my diabetes. So yes, the website is catering to other people's questions, but I still need to have it be with a positive spin. Diabetes is heavy. Diabetes can be very heavy. There's a lot of things about diabetes that's really not fun. And I want to acknowledge that, but I then want to turn it around. And every article will say, okay, this is the problem. This is what makes it so heavy. This is some of the things that we can do to make it less heavy. These are some of the things that can give us better understanding so that it becomes less frustrating. There has to be this, but this is what we can do. And that I hope anyone who reads the website, that's their takeaway, that there's always what can we do? Yes. We can't make diabetes go away necessarily, but what can we do about living better lives with diabetes?
And you might imagine, a lot of people through the years that have come and said, this woman is successful, this woman is doing it right, her numbers are great, but I know what you're saying with anxiety, and I certainly believe that you can reverse it. I want to reverse it rather than manage it, and so my flip side of where you are is I say, we got to get our butts out of the way. We got to get our butts out of the way and find the piece that makes it work for us. Doesn't deny the problem. From the moment of diagnosis, it's a problem. But I think you're like me in the sense that I'm not a victim. There's not a victim in my head. There's not a bully in my head. There's not just a reporter. Now, there's been a reporter more in me than anything, because I can talk about it, but then I've got to not stay thick to have integrity with how I care for me. And yet we've got a whole side of things right now from type 1ers as well that says it can't be about what you eat. And I get what they're saying, and that's true. It can't be all about the numbers. All of that is true. But there is some integrity. There is some, for me, looking at somebody that does it, has the right heart about it, and has researched to know what I might need. I'm trying to bring this all back around to you. Find out what I might need or what I might want, and then give me that. Thank you. That's all I can say today. Thank you. It's amazing. I am so grateful that you took this time out of your day to, I think in Florida, in Miami, it's probably an hour later than me, right?
I think so. We're Eastern.
You're Eastern. I'm Central in Nashville. And so this morning, about 3 o'clock, when an endocrinologist was texting me from Ukraine, well, no, she's in Dubai. Her family just left Ukraine and now they're safe. And I've been doing some work there. But at 3 o'clock this morning, I'm up working in Ukraine. I'm sure glad you're in Miami right now. You're only an hour different from me. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to say to anybody that listens that you might be able to encourage them along their journey today?
Well, I think regardless of where we are in the journey, we can always learn more, in the sense that diabetes is not a static thing. It's not like we go to a doctor, we're being told you need to take this amount of insulin, this amount of, at different times of day, and then just go, poof, and then you're all set. I think for a lot of people, all of a sudden it hits them going like, well, that doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, well, then you have to adapt. And I think that's the thing with diabetes. Diabetes is to be successfully manage your blood sugars to the best of your ability, you need to be able to adapt. And we can only do that if we have as much information as possible. And if we have the right tools.
So good. Adapt. That's my word for today. Adapt. When we have almost 200 opportunities to put something in our mouth, 200 opportunities to eat a day, that is, I don't care how long you've been diagnosed, 1 day or 1 year or 1,000 years, that is huge. And it's not something we can ignore, but we can't make it all about that. So what makes my blood sugar do what it does one time doesn't always do it the same way the next. And that ability to adapt, that is so good. Like if I'm going to walk and my blood sugar says 148, this morning I'm like, I'm not going to take insulin before I go because my sensor won't go off until 160. And the walking will keep it from going on because of that dawn phenomenon sometimes. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to wait. Well, doggone if it didn't go up, and I should have taken it before. But most of the time, I can not hear the beep if I'll go on and walk early. Does that make sense? So there's always room for adapting with this. Thank you so much. And when we have questions about how to adapt, we can go find that on diabetesstrong.com. Right?
Exactly.
Thank you so
And
much.
also, if people want to find, if they can't really figure out where to find the Instagram, the YouTube and all that, if you go to diabetesstrong.com, just scroll down on the bottom, there's these little icons. Like you see in most websites, there's an icon for, for Instagram, there's one for YouTube, there's one for Facebook, and just click right there, it takes you right to it.
Oh, that's good. Oh, one more thing before we go.
Yes.
When I saw on there, one of the top articles was about the socks that I said to you about, somebody walking and there's those socks. I had not been to a podiatrist until maybe 5-10 years ago. Nobody had told me. I thought I went when I had complications, and I've been one of the blessed ones without complications. I have good feet, but I started going regular when I knew I should go. And so when I interviewed 2 foot doctors the other day, one's in New York and one's here in Nashville, and they're not talked about a lot. They're not added to it. And unless you're older or unless you've had it for a long time. But again, all that knowledge the newly diagnosed needs to get. And I'll be dogged if you didn't have that even on your site today. So my thumbs up to you, girly.
Good timing.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure you can't tell. I'm not from California or Florida. You can't tell. I live right in the middle of Tennessee. Thank you again. And let's not be strangers. We are now in community together. If you ever need me, I'm here. I'll serve yours, and I will look to your information to serve mine.
Thank you. And likewise.
All right. Good day. And hi to your mama.
I will tell her that.
Okay. Bye-bye.